Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here, and the trade deadline is fast approaching, and the movements that are coming with this trade deadline in the last 24 hours have been sensational. We are recording as of the start of week 16 prior to tip-off, so they're about an hour and a half away from any games being played at the time of recording, so there has been some huge movements, and there may be some that I even missed while this video is being recorded, but that is going to be a huge tagline for this week's review. There has been plenty of action. There are plenty of teams that are up and about, that are certainly getting about it and starting to try and warm up and make their run late in the season when everyone's starting to lose their legs. But at the same time, there are still plenty of inconsistencies, and those at the top seem to be strong, those at the bottom still remain weak. So let's get into it. Let's get into my review for week 15 of the 25-26 NBA season. We start off with Atlanta, who are now 10th in the Eastern Conference, 24-27 overall, and a 1-2 weekly record for them. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, their best player this week, 20.7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. Shot 41.7% from the field, 40.7 from deep, and 84.6 from the free throw line. They have had a small bit of movement as well, which was really interesting to see from them. Kit Krajicki has been a really nice solid role player for them, and he moves on to Portland in a trade where Dupe Reith turns over to the Hawks. He's not a bad little reserve centre, but I wouldn't have necessarily thought that you get rid of one of the more consistent six-man performers this year in my eyes, and a key rotation for a team that has been battling the 500. Whether they think this height's going to help, I don't know. I just think it's a bit of a strange move. We move over to Boston, and they have had, well, and this is kind of ironic, isn't it? A 2-1 weekly record, 31-18 overall. They're back down to third in the conference. And the guy who I thought was their best player this week has just been pushed out the door. And he's been definitely one of the leading six-man of the year contenders in the association this year, Anthony Simons. In his 3 games played this week for the Celtics, 18.3 points, 2 rebounds and assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.7 turnovers. 51.2 from the field, 41.7 from deep, 100% from the free throw line, and he is now a member of the Chicago Bulls. He's been traded, and he has been moved on for Nikola Vucevic, which I don't mind as a move when you think about it from a Celtic standpoint. I don't think it's a huge game changer, but they needed some height. He fits into their system well. I think it does signal the fact that Jason Tatum's not going to be back this year, but I think it certainly does bolster their chances at a run there in the East. Vooch, to me, has been the best player for the Bulls. Strange to see them trade him out for a six-man. The Brooklyn Nets, with a typical Brooklyn Nets week, they are now 20 games below 500. They're 13th in the conference. They went 1-3 on the week. Daron Sharp, their best player to have played 4 games, and I think that's the epitome of where they're at. 9.5 points, 9 rebounds, an assist, 1.3 steals on 2 turnovers, 60% from the field, 100% from deep, 68.4 from the free throw line. They need draft picks. They need another couple of pieces at the very minimum to get themselves out of this hole. Over to the Charlotte Hornets, who have been on a huge run, a 7-game win streak over the last 2 weeks. Their coach was actually named Coach of the Month in the Eastern Conference, and it's very hard to argue when you see the results that they are getting. Con Knipple, 4 games played, and again has to be one of the leading Rookie of the Year contenders. If he's not number 1, he certainly has to be number 2. 18.5 points, 5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 0.5 steals, and 1.5 turnovers. Shot 47.9% from the field, 45.5 from deep, and 86.7 from the free throw line. All of a sudden, they are making an unexpected run. They've still got a bit of young talent to utilise. And, well, I suppose we're just sort of sitting there and wondering exactly what's going to happen with Charlotte. There are some wild rumours they're trying to get involved in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, and they would have to be pretty wild rumours because I don't see how he manages or wants to go to Charlotte. But stranger things have happened. We'll see exactly what's going on there with Charlotte. How long does he run last? I don't know, but I wouldn't want to be a playing team in poor form. And we move over to the Chicago Bulls, who have been making moves left, right, and centre. A 1-3 weekly record for them. They're now 24 and 26th. Again, back below 500, still 9th in the conference. they're certainly looking to load up on young guards, and that signifies a bit of a movement towards the back end here of Kobe White in Chicago, but we'll see exactly how that plays out for them. Ayo Desonmu, their best player this week in these 4 games played, 20.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 0.5 steals and 3.3 turnovers. He's consistently been one of their glue guys this year. Probably isn't getting the credit that he does deserve, particularly with the fanaticism surrounding the Josh Giddey signing. And, of course, the play of Nikola Vucevic, who is no longer with the team. 53.6 from the field, 41.2 from deep, 85.7 from the free throw line. Vucevic has been moved on to the Chicago Bulls moved from the Chicago Bulls to Boston for Anthony Simons. They've also had some really nice movement as well. They've been able to gain Jaden Ivey as a guard now. He has been traded out. He is due for a contract signing, so it's really interesting to see him there. They've also seen Mike Conley enter the fray as a lead senior guard. So you have Mike Conley, you have Jaden Ivey, you have Anthony Simons, and now adding to that rotation with Josh Giddey. Of course, Kevin Huerter has been moved on. There is, more information to come out about that. But ultimately, they have had a fair bit come back into their lineup. They're not looking too bad. I think they're now struggling for height ultimately, so we'll see how that one pans out. But their big movement there is Vucevic out, Ivey, Simons in. Big moves. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they continue to tick along a 2-1 weekly record. They're now 30-21 overall, 5th in the conference. Jarrett Allen, their best player this week, after there were some talks around Cleveland wanting to make a move on him and get him out, which didn't matter because they ended up making a move anyway, and they got rid of DeAndre Hunter off their roster for Dennis Schroeder for a bit of seniority at the point guard position. Allen this week, a really nice week. 23 points, 11 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 1.7 blocks per game on 1 turnover. 69.8 from the field. Didn't make a 3-point attempt, although he didn't attempt one either, which I sort of don't mind with this team. And 64.3% from the free throw line. Some nice, interesting conversations going around Cleveland at the moment around the potential of a LeBron James reunion. They've just got rid of DeAndre Hunter off their list, and factoring in all of that as well, there's talk that Darius Garland is going to be swapped out for James Harden. So I don't know exactly how this team's going to look. I don't know exactly what this team's goal now is, because they're potentially looking at one-and-done seasons or potentially bringing in guys to extend long-term when you've got a younger core and trying to add older players. Really confusing situation there for Cleveland. They've managed to return to good form, but it's not like Chicago, who have now loaded up on younger guards that they want to try and build around and try and make some moves for where they can. Cleveland, I don't know, they've got a really nice core when they're healthy, but all of a sudden they want to add some seniority that, to me, takes away from their title contention and the potential that they have, just in my opinion. The Detroit Pistons, 3-1 weekly record. They remain atop the conference. They are only a few games below Oklahoma City. They haven't played in as many contests as them. They're about 2.5 games below overall, but they are clearly the best team in the East. They actually lead the East by more than OKC leads the West. So that has been the kind of control they've had over the conference this year. Cade Cunningham, really nice work by him. Huge run by the Pistons this week in the 4 games that Cunningham played. 23.8 points, 3.5 rebounds, 10.3 assists, 1.8 steals, and 1.3 blocks on 1.8 turnovers. 50.7% from the field, 28.6 from deep, and 70.4 from the free throw line. They have lost Jaden Ivey. It was interesting to know what they were going to do, and they've managed to move him on, which is, certainly opened up some space for them. But they have added Kevin Huerter into their rotation, and he has been a great rotation piece for Chicago this year. The Pistons are certainly going to like that. They've also added Dario Saric into the mix. Now, he becomes more of a passing offensive big compared to a defensive big that you have with Duran and Stewart. So I think that becomes a really nice complement. I mean, it's a real, to me, hey, we can capitalise on an open window opportunity here for Detroit. We'll see exactly what they do and how it pans out. They are still number 1. I don't think that they've lost anything from that. If anything, it has solidified their case as a genuine interest out of the East this year. No movement for the Indiana Pacers. They are still stuck at rock bottom in the Eastern Conference. The only positive there, Pascal Siakam named an All-Star reserve. Wouldn't have been an All-Star in the way that I do things, but I absolutely see the case. The guy has been so consistent this year on a really poor team. He does deserve his flowers, and thankfully he's going to get that on the national stage and likely for the world team in the All-Star game. Nice week for him, even after, and a 2-1 week for the Pacers. 24 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1 steal and 0.3 blocks on 3 turnovers. Shot 55.8 from the field, 44.4 from deep, and 83.3 from the free throw line. The Miami Heat with a mid-week, so to speak, 2-2 record. I don't know where I was going with that number. 2-2 weekly record, 27-4 overall, 7th in the conference. Bam Adebayo has played out of his skin for the last month. I mean, to be fair, when they announced the All-Star reserves, he probably had a case at that point to be an All-Star reserve. At the time that all the All-Star voting was done, highly likely not, but certainly in that last few weeks and certainly the last month, he has made some serious noise. 20.5 points, 11 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1 steal and 1.8 turnovers, 46.8 from the field, 34.6 from deep, and 71.4 from the free throw line. I would not be shying these guys away from the chance that Giannis does land with them. I'm not saying that he does. I'm not saying that it's a certainty to happen, but Pat Riley just seems to have a way. And if there's a team that he's unlikely to go to that he lands with that can do something about their roster and try and build around him successfully, it's going to be the Miami Heat. I would put full trust in Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, and the team to do that. The Milwaukee Bucks had another disappointing week, and it's all coming off the back of the fact that Giannis is out and likely gone from the team. 0-3 weekly record, 18-29 overall, 12th in the conference. They are floundering when other teams are looking to move and make moves. I'd say their season is done. Ryan Rollins, a really nice piece for them this year. He's really broken out. One of the more improved players in the league. 3 games played this week, 22 points, 5.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks and 1.3 turnovers. Epically efficient from the field overall at 56.5 and 61.5 from deep, respectively. 2/3 of his free throws, but it doesn't matter at the moment. They are just playing this season out. The New York Knicks have put themselves back up into second position in the Eastern Conference with a really nice run. 31-18 overall. Now, they had an undefeated 4-0 week, as I mentioned, second in the conference, and a lot of it was off the back of the huge two-way play of OG Anunoby, who, again, just proving what it takes in New York. You've got to be committed on both sides of the ball. You've got to put your body on the line. Your coach will reward you. The fans will reward you. The front office will reward you. They want New York style of basketball. Big week for OG Anunoby. 22.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 2.8 steals, 0.8 blocks on 2.8 turnovers. But it's the efficiency of 62.5 from the field along with 50% from deep, coupled in with that two-way play. That is just a phenomenal effort by Anunoby. 77.8 from the free throw line. As I said, I like to see 8 out of 10 there, but he's doing a lot more on the floor, so there are some areas that you can just let slip. Again, they are free for a reason, though. You'd like to see those made. No news on New York making any moves. They are still always in the conversation for someone like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, but certainly no moves there. Karl Anthony Towns named as an All-Star reserve was interesting, particularly as he would probably be a key piece in any movement there. The Orlando Magic haven't made any moves, but they are still sitting 2 games above 500. A 2-1 weekly record helping with that there. 8th in the conference. Desmond Bane has been huge for them this year. In fact, I think there's going to be a case that he has been their best player through to the All-Star break, but I'll check on that when the time counts for it. 3 games played this week for Bane. 26.7 points, 2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1 steal, 1.7 turnovers, 64.6 from the field, 61.1 from deep, 100% from the free throw line. It does look like that he's managed to get out of trouble pretty quickly with the Grizzlies. Were some real questions around what was going on with that front office at the start of the year. Still some questions remaining around that front office, but he's managed to avoid all of the drama. No general movement at the moment there for Orlando. They are still sitting there, probably biding their time, and I think we're going to see something at some stage around Wagner and Banchero. They're going to have to really try and build around them. I don't think that you can go and put a Giannis down there. There isn't enough space. I think they've got to add some shooters. I think they still have to try and get one full healthy season out of them to see exactly where they sit. So we'll see exactly what goes on there with Orlando. They are, well, trying their best with a bad heap at the moment. The medical card has been the big play for them. Philadelphia 76ers rocked, not necessarily by a trade this week, but rocked by the fact that Paul George has been done for, well, you can only assume performance-enhancing drugs. He has been suspended 25 games. That rules his season all but done. And to the surprise of nobody, honestly, when you see some of the performances that have been put in from some guys who have been all but bedridden in this league to be able to do that. I don't want to hear any conversations that PEDs aren't potentially involved in any team sport. When you look at what it takes to play in the NBA in a full roster, it can't shock too many people, particularly those that have suffered through injuries. I've got no qualm in them taking them. I just don't think it should shock people when you find out that they do take them. Moving on to the positives, though, for Philly. 4-0 weekly record. They're now back sitting comfortable in 6th, 28-21 overall. And Joel Embiid with a huge week, the best week that he has had in almost 2 years. 32.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal and 0.8 blocks on 2.5 turnovers, 49.5 from the field, 46.2 from deep, and 85% from the free throw line. If he's going to be there putting on performances like this next to a Maxey, next to an Edgecombe, with Quentin Grimes, with Jared McCain and the like, all these guys that are on this team, Philadelphia become a more dangerous team. I don't think they can possibly win it because I think there's deficiency in the playoffs, but it's certainly nice and complimentary for a team like Philly to be getting this sort of performance. Over to Toronto, they haven't made any moves in the off-season in the trade deadline, so to speak. We'll call it silly season for any sort of lack of fact, but at the same time, they are still sitting pretty 30-21, 4th overall in the conference. Them and Cleveland are tied. I still think they've had a more consistent season than Cleveland because they've got more rounded potential and more contributors across the board. 1-2 weekly record this week, though. Brandon Ingram was their best player. He is a guy who I think was unlucky not to get an all-star nod, and I'm genuine about that. I really feel that he should have got an all-star nod. 27 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 1.3 turnovers. So pretty efficient across the board as well when you come to the shooting splits. 51.7 from the field, 37.5 from deep, and 88.2 from the free throw line. Toronto is one of the best defensive teams in the league. It's a big reason they're winning games because their offense simply complements their defense. Wasn't quite as much the case this week, but they are still showing signs that they can be a team that can contend, a team that may make a surprising move if they need to, if they feel they're just one bit away from potentially capturing the East this year. But I think they're pretty confident with what they've got in the long term. Meanwhile, the Wizards sit at 13-35, a 3-1 weekly record for them, which was positive. Otherwise, they certainly would have been the worst team in basketball. They're 14th in the conference and not by much ahead of Indiana. But yeah, a 3-1 weekly record. They're still 13-35 overall. Not much that can be done about that. Keyshawn George, their best player this week in the 4 games that he played, 15.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals and 1.5 blocks, so reasonably rounded for him on 2 turnovers. Unfortunately, it was the shooting splits that undid him. Less than 40% from the field at 39.7, 30.8 from deep, and 81.1 from the free throw line. Moving over to the Dallas Mavericks, they are well and truly out of it now. 12 games below 500, 12th in the conference. Huge efforts right now from Cooper Flagg. There is not enough attention in my mind still going on that young man because he is clearly the guy now in Dallas that they need to move around. There's still no movement on Kyrie. There hasn't been any move on Anthony Davis. You really don't know exactly what's going on there with the Mavs. But Brandon Williams with a really nice week in the 3 games that he played. 15 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.7 steals on 1.3 turnovers. Shot 55.6 from the field, 60% from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. The Denver Nuggets, they are 2-2 on the week. 33-17 overall. They are essentially tied for second in the West, but they are currently seated at third. Jamal Murray finally getting a much-deserved all-star nod after almost half a decade of injuries, of interruptions, and proving that when it matters the most, he can get the job done. A guy who has always been an all-star level talent that is finally getting recognised for what he can do. Massive shout out Jamal Murray. That's awesome to see. Nice week for him. 20.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 9.3 assists, 1 steal and 0.5 blocks on 2 turnovers. Would have liked to see a little bit more from the field at 45% and 31.8 from deep respectively, 78.6 from the free throw line. We know he can make them when he needs to. But yeah, really nice work for Jamal Murray there. No movements from Denver. They are still concerned with Aaron Gordon being out for another 4 to 6 weeks. A guy who was probably on the precipice of trying to crack All-Star selection this year. But nonetheless, it hasn't happened. Denver just need to stay healthy. They need to stay the course. They've got the best player in the world. He now has an All-Star with him. It'll be interesting to see what Denver can do from here. The Golden State Warriors. The big rumour for them is that they are wanting Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the big rumour is that they have thrown 14-year, 4-time championship Defensive Player of the Year veteran and one of the most confusing players that the league has seen in Draymond Green on the offer block, on the trade block and up for offer for any big moves that they can make. Golden State this week, only the 2 games, went 1-1, 27 and 23 overall, still remaining 8th in the West, which is a position that now they're a few games above 500 is a lot more comfortable than previously thought. Steph Curry played the 2 games, was their best player, but really limited outside of his scoring this week. 25 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists, 1 steal and 0.5 blocks on 4.5 turnovers. 46.7 from the field, 40% from deep, 93.3 from the free throw line. Again, still the standard bearer for shooters in the league. But Golden State, they're going to have to really consider making a move if they want to do anything left with this roster. Jimmy Butler, does he get traded? It's a big contract. Who knows? But it's going to be really interesting for Golden State in these coming days and potentially in these coming hours as we record. The Houston Rockets with a nice week. They haven't made any real moves. They are concerned, or there are concerns around Steven Adams not necessarily being there, but they are sitting comfortably enough to be a nice contender in the West. You do just wonder with that rebound style of game that they have had this year, whether that is going to have an impact on exactly how they look. A 3-1 record this week, 31 and 17 overall. They are 4th in the conference. Armin Thompson, a huge week. One of the most underrated players in the NBA. He can get it done on both ends of the floor. He's got a lot of length about him. He does remind me a little bit of what Drew Holiday could do when he was really up and going in his prime. I think he probably deserves an all-defensive nod. He does get overshadowed a lot by the offensive side of the ball and certainly their rotations, particularly a Reed Shepherd this year, but he has been huge. 17.8 points, 8.3 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 2.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks and 1.8 turnovers on the season. 45.2, on the season, on the week. 45.2 from the field, didn't attempt a 3, and 71.4 from the free throw line. This is a guy that can legitimately run around as your 4th option. That's the kind of depth that this Houston team has. And I say that simply because there are other guys that do like to contribute and get it done. You've got to factor in Fred VanVleet, hasn't been here, but he can legitimately be a 4th or 5th option on any team and produce this. That's the kind of depth that Houston have. The Los Angeles Clippers, they are getting closer and closer towards 500, which would then start to concern Golden State if they start getting a few losses on the board. But the concern now becomes around what this lineup looks like and how it's going to factor in the back half of the season, with conversations around James Harden being had seriously with a Darius Garland. Now, from a positive standpoint for the Clippers, it would get rid of an aging star and quite a large contract. You bring in a Garland who is getting paid, but he is younger. I know he's had a bit of a down year with health, but you can hopefully look to get him, bring him in, turn him off for the season, say, right, dude, we don't need you for the rest of the year. Go and get healthy, bring him back in. Especially when you got someone like a Kawhi Leonard having one of the better years of his Clipper career, but we seem to say that every time Kawhi steps on the floor. Just is a level of play that he brings. They had a 2-2 weekly record, the Clippers, 23 and 26 overall. Now, Kawhi this week, 24 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. 49.4 from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 65% from the free throw line. So not quite the 3-point shooting and the free throw shooting we expect out of a Kawhi. But at the same time, he's really established himself again as the leader, again as the man. That might be a factor in Harden's decision. He's then becoming a second option, but he's getting to that point in his career where he needs to settle for second option. Pinch hit like he has. He had a great week last week and has had some great weeks this year. He's been one of their leading players. But sometimes you just need to understand when to settle, and I think Harden's at that point. The Los Angeles Lakers have had plenty of conversations going on around them, but there hasn't been much action happening at this stage. When you look at the fact that there's talk that LeBron could potentially be back at Cleveland and his time in Los Angeles is ending imminently, does that mean the end of the year? Does that mean before the trade deadline? With that, you would think Bronny has to go. I can't imagine keeping Bronny in LA by himself because simple fact is he just wouldn't get a game. There's talk that they want to get Malik Monk in, but who do you move out for that? Dalton Connect wants to be on the move, but there really isn't much happening there. Gabe Vincent apparently is a conversation about being on the move, but there isn't much happening there. Ultimately, it's taking away from the fact that the Lakers are still sitting 6th. They're 10 games above 500, and one of the leading contenders for the MVP race is having another huge year. And again, as I've said before, has proven he can lead this team, and they've looked better under his stewardship this year. Luka Doncic, 20 in the 3 games he played this week, 32 points, 10.3 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steal on 3.3 turnovers, 54.7 from the field and 40% from deep. Huge week for him. He was just named Western Conference Player of the Week, Player of the Month, I should say. 63.2 from the free throw line. Again, it's the off-court drama that's causing all the on-court debacle. It's been happening for some time. There's talk about moving DeAndre Ayton. Austin Reeves hasn't been back, and I mean, you know, there's conversations around him having to be signed. The Lakers, as much as they look like they're right back at the top, are back in that conversation of no man's land once again. Speaking of teams that are somewhat in no man's land but are potentially looking to start making some moves, and certainly have made a pretty big move at the moment, that is the Memphis Grizzlies, who have traded Jaren Jackson Jr. out of the team. He is on the move. He has also gone with John Concha, Jock Landale, Vincent Williams Jr. They have gone to the Utah Jazz in exchange for Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, Georges Niang, and 3 first-round picks. Jaren Jackson Jr., the most recent All-Star, he was a Defensive Player of the Year for Memphis. He was actually probably on my list of guys to get a jersey for. And now I'm going to have to wait to see exactly how his career in Utah pans out. Memphis this week, adding to that, went 1-3 on the week. 10 games below 500, 11th in the conference. They looked like they were making a run. I don't think that's now going to happen. They're going young. They're resetting the table. For me, it says that either Jar is going to be the man or Jar is on the way out. There's going to be no middle ground on that there. Cedric Coward's going to be one of those leading rebuilding blocks, though. He's been a tremendous rookie so far this year, and he's had another great week for them here. 13 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.5 blocks on 2.5 turnovers. 47.5 from the field, 35.3 from deep, and 88.9 from the free throw line. Memphis now, my understanding, have some of the biggest draft hauls going right now. Going to have a look at where this one sits because it is a tremendous draft haul. I believe right now as we read it here, they have as many future first round picks as any team in the NBA in the upcoming years. So they are very clearly keen to rebuild and move on. To me, it does scream A, your run this year's over, and B, we still have one more move, and it's likely Ja Morant to be out of the team. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they have parted ways with Mike Conley. That is the major news for them this week. And the rumour is that they are trying to get themselves in a position to obtain Giannis Antetokounmpo. They've created significant tax savings, and it is being reported that they are doing it for the Milwaukee Star, which means that they probably still have a couple of moves to make. But Giannis Antetokounmpo on that team becomes an interesting prospect when you look at the pieces that they already have versus what they may need to move to get him. They, either way, I think, become a genuine contender for it. You obviously keep Anthony Edwards. I would think you keep DiVincenzo and McDaniels as well. The question remains as to who else moves. Do you have to move Randall? Do you have to move Gobert? Can you possibly move Gobert? Can you possibly move Randall? Really interesting times there for Minnesota, but they had a really nice week, a 3-1 weekly record, 31-20 overall. They remain 5th in the conference, and I've said they're still the smoky team to make their run. They just timed their run at the right time, and their front office here clearly thinks they're going to be able to make a run. 4 games played by Anthony Edwards this week, again an all-star. Big week for him. 29.5 points, 5 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.8 steals and 0.8 blocks on 2 turnovers, 45.1 from the field, 37.9 from deep, and 80.5 from the free throw line. 3 words for Minnesota: watch this space. There is a space you shouldn't watch, though, and it's wedged right between the other space that you should watch, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans, a 1-3 weekly record. They're now 26 games below 500. They're 14th in the conference. They, to me, are probably closer to the second worst team in the league when you see the inconsistencies that they get and the length of contract that they've got and the experience that they have as well. Sadiq Bey with a really nice week though, 20 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.5 steals on 1 turnover, 40.9 from the field, 38.5 from deep, 94.1 from the free throw line. The only positives for their team was his shooting percentage. Told you it was an absolute wedgie. In fact, it was more of a sandwich. The best team in the NBA, 2-1 weekly record, bouncing off a tough run that they had earlier over the last couple of weeks. 39-11 overall. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander still the man on this team. Chet Holmgren named as an all-star reserve. They have plenty of picks. They also have plenty of movement to offer if they really want it. But again, Shai, the leader of this team. 31 points, 5.7 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1 steal, 0.3 blocks on 4 turnovers. That's one of the 2 inefficiencies that you don't usually see out of Shai. 55.4 from the field. The guy's averaging around 56% from the field this year. It's ridiculous. 28.6 from deep. That was below par. And 90.6 from the free throw line. Not much more to add to the best team in the league. They've now got a confirmed second all-star. Chet, to me, has been one of the leading defenders in the league. I wouldn't have had him as an all-star, but I certainly don't disagree with his selection. I think there are guys on both sides of the ball that need to be recognised, Chet being one of them, and Cason Wallace has been huge for them as well this year. The Phoenix Suns are a team that may potentially be on a watch list as well as far as movement to make. You're talking about guys that want to move at the trade deadline. There's some real conversations around moving Domantas Sabonis off the Kings. And there's a real conversation around how well he would fit in Phoenix and the proven fit that someone like a Nurkic has had, that Sabonis can play to that level and some. So we'll see what Phoenix can do, but they have had a really nice week. Dylan Brooks actually named their player of the week, and I wish the national media was held to accountability for their absolutely pathetic takes that they have on some players. Dylan Brooks, 2.5-3 years ago, was told to get ready to go and play in China. Dylan Brooks has proven time and time again with the teams that he has played on that he has not been the issue. In fact, he has survived and he has thrived. Huge week for him. 3-1 weekly record for the Suns, 10 games above 500, 7th in the conference for Brooks in his 4 games, 28.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.8 assists, a steal and 0.5 blocks on 1.5 turnovers, 53.5 from the field and 54.5 from deep. Huge effort there by Dylan Brooks, 84.4 from the free throw line. Phoenix, they have plenty of guys around them. They have plenty of young pieces around them. They just keep plugging away. The question is going to be whether they can finally crack into that 6th seed. That will depend on the movements that the Lakers make and, of course, that the Timberwolves make. I don't know exactly whether they can do it, but they've set themselves in good stead to potentially get that complementary piece like a Sabonis that then changes their game really quickly. Over to the Portland Trail Blazers, a 0-3 weekly record for them. They are still 10th in the conference. They will need to be careful as teams continue chasing up the ladder at them, particularly the Clippers, who, to me, are the only other team out of the 10 that can make the play-in tournament right now. 23-27 overall, 10th in the conference. Shaedon Sharpe, one of the young guys that they need to keep a focus on. He would be a really nice trade piece, but he's a guy that you need to stick with because you've got a lot of senior guards there that are going to need someone to take the reins at some point. 25.7 points, 3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1 steal and 0.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers, 52.6 from the field, 44% from deep and 75% from the free throw line. It's not necessarily huge news and it shouldn't come as shocking, but there are some very good reports that Damian Lillard is involved in trying to get Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, factoring in that he does have a championship teammate there previously in a Drew Holiday, Dame will be back next year. At his age, I don't know how that's going to look off an Achilles. You add in the fact that you've got a Shaedon Sharpe sitting right there, you do have some really nice pieces around Giannis. Now, I don't know how the depth of the rest of the team looks when you do have to get rid of quite a significant amount of it to get him there, but you can't not shy away from the fact that Giannis has played with Damian Lillard and wanted him, and he's won a championship with Drew Holiday. Very interesting scenario in Portland unfolding. One of the more uninteresting scenarios falling apart right now is the Sacramento Kings, who didn't win a game this week. They're the worst team in basketball. There's conversations around getting rid of Domantas Sabonis, and there's conversations around Malik Monk leaving. So you lose your best player and you lose your best 6th man with a bunch of old contracts that no one wants. DeRozan, their best player this week, 24.3 points, 3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 0.3 steals and 1.5 turnovers, 50.7 from the field, 20.7 27.3 from deep, and 83.9 from the free throw line. I don't begrudge these guys getting their contracts, but they're going to be stuck in absolute purgatory unless they take veteran minimum to join contending teams right now, because the Kings can't do anything with the contract that he and Zach LaVine have. No movement from the San Antonio Spurs, but I think they're quietly confident with the roster that they've got and the youth that they've got, that they are going to continue to climb up the tree. Over time, there's no need to rush it, and why would you when you've got someone like Wemby on the screen there? A 2-1 weekly record, 33-16 overall. They are second in the conference. They have to be one of the 3 leading contenders out of the West. And to be honest with you, the only thing that would give them the edge right now is that they clearly have been a bogey side for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And if they get out of the West and they move over to the East, who knows? It's as simple as that. Who knows? Wemby with another big week, and he's playing limited minutes still, but to me, he's clearly the defensive player of the year still. He does have some serious competition, but to me, he is still the defensive player of the year. He's probably not going to be back up in MVP conversations just because he's missing games, but it's certainly a bonus for the Spurs. 23 points, 10.7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2.3 steals, and 3.3 blocks on 2.7 turnovers. 48.8 from the field, didn't make a 3, and 79.4 from the free throw line. Spurs are pretty content with their bunch right now. They're 17 above 500. They're second in the conference, and they have every reason to believe that they could beat Oklahoma City in a 7-game series. I would be very shocked if they made a major move before the deadline. And a team that I was shocked that made a move before the deadline is a Utah Jazz team that's 20 games below 500, and I can't see them doing anything for the now, but certainly into the future I can see them looking to make some impact. 0-4 in the week, 15-35 overall. They have just acquired Jaren Jackson Jr. to their team from the Memphis Grizzlies. You pair him up with a Walker Kessler when he is healthy. You add in Markkanen and Keontae George. All of a sudden, your lineup looks very, very different. I think it's going to look different instantly, but it's not going to be enough to overturn a 20-game deficit from 500 this late in the season. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I really hope it is, because Utah, when they're firing, are an exciting team, but it's a long way back for them. So as stated there, they have managed to get Jaren Jackson Jr., John Concha, Jock Landale and Vince Williams Jr. And I have actually liked the way Landale has played. He's moved himself into one of the more impressive rotational pieces in the latter stages of this part of the season, certainly since the start of January. He has been nice, so he'll be a key rotation for them. He almost goes into starting centre role with the way that this team has been going. So if you can capitalise on that form, maybe there's a bit of an indent there. I just don't see it happening. Of course, getting rid of Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks and Georges Niang with 3 first-round picks means that they are going to try, I think, and stay the course with what they've got. But Utah, for me, are done for the season. They've moved on for the future, and part of that future also will be Ace Bailey, who had probably his more consistent standout week for me this year as a rookie and for the Jazz. 13.8 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.5 blocks on 1 turnover, 43.1 from the field, 39.1 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. And as of the time of recording, there is no further news, there are no further updates on any of the teams that I have just spoken about. That has been my review for Week 15 of the 25-26 NBA season. I expect a lot more movement just based on some of the moves that have been made by contending teams, let alone teams that don't have a shot right now. I think there's going to be some movement. There just has to be at this point. I don't know who, I don't know where, I don't know what, because there's so many doors open in that sense. But the league's going to look very different when I speak about it next week, is probably the best way to put it. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That's been my review for Week 15 of the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.